Well, hello. It's me. Everything's new and set up, and I've had to redo OBS. And unfortunately, it means I've forgotten a few things along the way. Whoops. You, you know I'm still here even when the mic's off, don't you? Yeah? Good. Hello, folks. It's me. If you hadn't guessed already, yes, everything's kind of yeah. You're going to notice a bit like all this stuff is going to be a little screwed up for a second. So I just need to make adjustments as I go. I don't know why it's doing that. Everything has been changed. Right, why is my camera on top and not the... Huh. That's interesting. Okay, I think I know what to do. There we go. Let's get that like that. And then let's get that and do this. Yes, it is. I will explain momentarily. There we go. Sexy or what? I hope you can all hear me very well. Good evening, welcome to the stream, all that kind of stuff. Apologies for last week. Part of the problems I'm having tonight is actually down to the fact that I built a brand new computer. Nope, same camera. It's just playing ball a little bit better. I just recently got myself new motherboard, new processor. So essentially this is a new computer that I'm working on. So everything, OBS has completely had to be reset up. That is one thing that seems to be a bit of a problem when it comes to OBS Studio as opposed to Streamlabs OBS. Streamlabs OBS I moved away from because it had serious limitations as to what I could do. And basically... when I did that last stream with my brother back at his place, I literally just loaded up OBS and I signed in, and all the settings were correct, and I didn't have the luxury of that on this version. So I've had to set everything back up. It's all been a bit involved. And last week, basically, I started about 8 in the morning with building the new computer. And I got to about 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and I just knew it wasn't going to work. There was all sorts of problems. There was video card problems because the AMD does not have onboard graphics, and for some reason it wasn't talking to the video card. So I had to at a point, it was like about 8 o'clock at night, I kind of just went screw it, and I had to revert back to my old computer, and then I had another go, and I got it to work when I got a few little bits and pieces. I had to buy the cheapest video card I could find that would be reliable to do the job. But eventually I got there. There's still a lot to do, but there you go. Was it hard to make a computer from scratch? It's not massively difficult in many respects. It's just a case of researching what it is you're actually buying. One thing I skipped, I didn't realise, was that the AMD, like I say, doesn't have onboard graphics, which means you can't connect direct to the motherboard connections, right? So you have to go through the GPU, and it's like kind of like that. That really threw me for a loop. It really caused me problems. I will post the link one more time before we start. Just so you know, I forgot to put it in a description, and it's a bit late to do that now. You don't have Wicker Man? Yes, Kieran, it will be around. So there you go. So yeah. Last week was, oh god, it was so hard work. I was basically sat cross-legged on the floor most of the day, trying to like take this thing to pieces and put it back together again, take it back to pieces and put it back together again. I was like, oh my god. One of the more challenging times I've ever built a computer. It's worthwhile trying. It's a little, it's a lot more pricey than you know, kind of like getting some cheap ass piece of crap off of the shelf, but the end results should be fairly good. Things are settling down with it, so figuring it out. Oh, there are ads up the arse on. Don't think so on this one. I apologise for those, but you know, sometimes when we're sourcing them like this, it's one of those things that, you know, it is what it is. It's either that or we pay for it. You know, I get something from Prime or something like that, and everybody has to pay, and I try not to do that as too much. Most of you do have this anyway, so you're welcome to join in on the, I guess, the director's cut. That's the one it seems to be. Excuse me. Yep, had my second jab yesterday as well, so my arm is feeling like I've just been rabbit punched. It's a little bit sore. But yeah. Oh, fair enough. If you can't live with that, Kieran, then that's entirely up to you. I don't do this very often. It was a bit of a kind of like, oh, okay, right, let's have a look what we got here. But yeah. So that was that. I mean, the week before last, I was up at my brother's place again, which was very nice to see. You know, I took the vodka up. So we kind of went to the pub on a couple of nights and partook in some of the Skull vodka. I've made him promise to take a little bit up to my sister, but I've also made my sister promise that she won't kind of stick something stupid in it just because he's used to drinking Smirnoff or crap like that. Oh, okay. It's not the director's cut. Well, this one says 100. This is 133 minutes. 99 minutes. So, well, I'd say 1 hour 33 minutes, I should say. That's 93 minutes. It says that, so that's probably that version. Don't know. I guess we're going to find out, aren't we? And it all goes tits up on my first one back for 3 weeks. Need to set up another monitor so I can watch on that. Yeah, take a few minutes to do that if you need to do that. That'll be absolutely fine. I think I sit out actually watching us try and get in the near future. Finally did get the Elm Street box set since I've never seen any of them. Oh, yeah, okay. Oh, first one's great. Second one's pretty decent, and the other one's just kind of silly. Whether you find that silliness fun or not is entirely down to you. But I kind of I lost interest with them as they sort of progressed. But yeah, Director's Cut DVD has some strange inserts. Ooh, when film starts, Glenn, is it a black screen or? I don't know off the top of my head. It's the link that I got from you, so. We're going to find out, I guess. It's very exciting. Give you 5 to 7 minutes, going to switch devices. Fair enough. But yeah, so new computer. Spent far too much money on it. Still got more to spend. I think what I've got to do now, upgrade the memory will be probably the next thing. I need to get a couple of 4TB hard drives and eSATA card. And the last thing will be the video card, which is going to be expensive, but hopefully by the time we get round to the video card, the prices will have come down a little bit. Heard Elm Street 3 is pretty good. I just find it very silly. The later they go, they're very silly. I mean, it's fun enough. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying don't watch it, but I didn't particularly like the direction that the Elm Street stuff went in. I feel the same about, you know, kind of. With Halloween and Friday the 13th, they kind of really kind of fucked with the formula and made, Freddie into a comedian essentially. And I don't know. We will never see the proper long version of this Wicker Man as it's in its landfill. Is it? I know a lot of kind of versions sort of have disappeared, and it's always the Warner Brothers thing with the Devils, for instance. You kind of always have to lament the loss of these things because studios aren't particularly forward thinking. Oh dear, my eyes are like pea holes in the snow tonight. I don't know what it is. I've just been very tired today. I think it might be connected to my my jab yesterday. Didn't sleep very well last night, and I tried to have a kip this afternoon, and it's just not happening. Not happening. But I guess I'll kip a bit better later on, and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I got the kind of a couple of bits and pieces along the way. When I was up at Gary's, I got that and that. So I got Dawn of the Dead, that one. I know it's not the really kind of super posh, extra special, oversized box thing that everybody was raving about, but it's not a bad version. And I picked up the Alien trilogy on Blu-ray, or anthology, I should say, on Blu-ray, because I wanted it on Blu-ray for one thing, and this was really cheap. This was only like £8 in CEX, so I kind of went, fuck it, let's do that. Apparently so. Commode's stock burnt offering sales. It's a shame when that kind of stuff happens, isn't it? Black Sheep at the moment for those who are playing at home. Yeah, Glenn Workman were clearing up some rubbish from the film studio. Took the longest version of Wicker Man and accidentally used it for landfill. Oh, for fuck's sake. The history of film preservation is really quite rotten. It's really quite rotten. You see how much of film history has gone, especially with early cinema. Right up until kind of like, post-World War II. The vast majority of films that were made are gone. And, granted, a lot of that's trash, but you can guarantee there was some real treasure. In fact, there's a load of titles that are really, people really, really want to see that aren't available anymore because they're just either just disintegrated or they were recycled and all that kind of stuff. So it's a real shame. Have the BFI copy of The Devils, which purports to be uncut. It's missing. The Devils will be missing at least some scenes. When they say it's uncut, it's uncut from the studio's point of view. If you know what I mean. Yeah, I mean, I think there's bits of the rape of Christ and all that kind of stuff in that particular film that is still missing, amongst other bits and pieces. But that was always the key scene. Listen to some of Verhoeven's commentary on Spetter's very interesting so far, and the transfer is awesome. Excellent. Verhoeven's an interesting director when you kind of follow him through from his beginning stuff. Carl Kalgren did a very interesting, very long 2-part video on Verhoeven's career. It's absolutely fascinating. Yeah, you're quite right there, John. It's literally Warner Brothers is the only thing that's stopping the fullest version of that film coming out. It's ridiculous. They're still prudish about it to this day. Even when the Catholic Church is like going, no, it's fine, you can release this. Why won't Warner give us what we want? What studios do. Somebody at Warner's, or Warner Brothers as an entity, seems to have a real problem with that film in particular. It's got a history as far as they're concerned, and while I could potentially understand why they were having problems with it to begin with, kind of like back in the day, it's like a lot of time has passed, and yeah, Spetters has real sex, doesn't it? It wouldn't be that surprising. I don't see why it's such a big deal half the time. This is one of those things. It's like pornos from the kind of like the golden era of pornos was really only had stories and stuff like that because it was a way of getting around the censors and all that kind of stuff. Because it couldn't be counted as pornographic if it actually had a story of any kind of note. And it didn't have to be much of a story. It just needed to have a story. If it was just the boning scene, shall we say, the sex scenes in their own right, then it's considered to be pornographic. But if it's got a story, it's considered to have artistic merit. And they couldn't really kind of write their way around that because it's a very hard thing to define, you know, what is art. So they really, really struggled with it. Oh dear. Yes, I've heard of it. I highly recommend anybody who's interested in that stuff. I know Carl Galgren's a bit of a divisive figure for some, politically speaking, all that kind of stuff. But that video was pretty magnificent, you know, in its writing. I think it was absolutely fascinating. You know, he goes right, talks about all of the stuff, you know, from the pre-Hollywood to the Hollywood period. You know, kind of like right through things like Showgirls and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, Showgirls is an interesting film. You know, I mean, it's one of those films. It has that legendarily awful tag to it, but it's kind of it's more for me that it's strangely toned in terms of like, the acting and stuff like that is a little. It is kind of weird. The story is janky, but yeah, it sort of worked for me. Oh dear. Oh, you've seen Love by Noe. Definitely his weakest movie. Oh dear. They've got to have at least one weakest movie, haven't they? My Irreversible review keeps getting the oddest comments. I had somebody writing in Russian on it. And I was thinking, is this just a spam bot or something like that? So I had to go translate it to make sure that it was kind of good to go, and it was fine. It was fine. Okay, so give us a thumbs up if you're sort of ready to go, and we'll get going in the next like 5 minutes or so. I think that's probably a good plan to do. Hit cracking with this rather classic film. I mean, you guys have been asking for it for a long time, so why not? Yeah, Kerry, that there is something about his work that, you know, will turn some people right away. It's kind of how it is. Some people find it very, very difficult to sit through his stuff. It does have an atmosphere to it and a tone to it, to say the least, that is not exactly massively audience friendly. But I find it interesting, generally speaking, that kind of stuff, because it gives you a little bit of work. You have to think about the story for a little bit, which I think is always worthwhile. But there you go. Brilliant. Irreversible quite experienced. We saw it on big screen a couple of years back. Fantastic movie though. Yes, it's one hell of a thing. Okay, folks. Then we seem to have enough people sort of ready. I hope everybody's ready. You should have the link and all that kind of stuff. So we will get started then. I think we will go in on the count of 5 and go and go. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Larry Gordon. Sorry, folks, I just had to pause for a second and reload my browser. So I might be a few seconds behind you. Because what we're setting up here is obviously uh, it is almost a battle of the Christians versus the pagans in this, and Howie himself is very much presented as being this uh, almost. I think he's been described as almost being like a virginal, but a very pristine character. I think is probably a better thing. Don't watch anything by Noah if you're epileptic. It's probably not got as much unsimulated sex as Nymphomaniac. It's a beautiful old church in this, isn't it? So I think that's the thing, Richard. He's very much an innocent in so many respects. Although he's a policeman and should know better. I mean, it's the whole point of it is kind of like that this character is this very pristine type of character, you know, pristine of character and soul and virtuous and all those kind of things. What a stunningly beautiful part of the world as well. Uh, we're Gordon. We're watching the 1 hour 33 minute, so the 93 minute version. I think it's a very cohesive film in most respects, Richard. I think that's the thing about it. It's not even that the music's particularly amazing. It is kind of very that very folky sort of thing going on anyway. Which you know, if you're not into it, it's not amazing. But you know, it's well performed, yada yada yada. Uh, but the whole film, the way it looks, the way it feels, all buys into that into the thrust of what it's doing, which is very important. And music is so vital to how to what goes on with the kind of like how the movie is sold to you. Which is why one of those things I've always had a problem with, like Rob Zombie's film, is his music choice, which is, you know, it's cool music, it's great music, in fact, a lot of the stuff that he puts in there, but so little of it fits for me. And I find that incredibly, you know, it just rips you out of the scene when that sort of thing happens. Goosebumps Stranger in this version got released. It does hammer the message home a bit more that we shouldn't really despair for Howie. He's going somewhere grand no matter how he gets there. Yes. See, that's the thing, isn't it? He's such a pious man that, to some degree, it's he he's almost kind of like yeah. Well, he's sending like you kind of sort of hint towards sending him to a better place. Though it would be questionable as to whether or not that sort of way of going out would liberate your soul to heaven. That's one of the songs I absolutely despise at the in its use was that use of Freebird. Felt so wrong to me. And Freebird's a great song and all that kind of stuff, but I didn't see the point of having it at that point of the film what was going on with that, you know, because it has connotations as to what it's trying to say about this situation, and it's like, yeah. Edward Woodward was a right dapper fella, wasn't he? You'd love to live there. Yeah, I think the only thing I would kind of be concerned with is making sure that I had a good supply of beer and an internet connection, and I would live there in a heartbeat. I know it's sacrilege, isn't it? Like I say, in a place like this, if it's got no internet, fuck it. But I don't know. I think I would adapt to that if that was the case. I'm not sure how old he was. Edward Woodward. Yep. So he was born in 1930, and yeah, so he was born in 1930, and this was a 1973 film. So there you go. It's always one of the fun things with his name, isn't it? Edward Woodward. His parents are having a bit of a laugh, but a hell of an actor. And if anyone can get away with being called Edward Woodward, it's Edward Woodward. I love a lot of these British horror films that really sort of get into the countryside kind of thing. It's like with Straw Dogs, where you got characters that aren't like kind of stereotype, kind of Cockney type characters or something like that. You know, it's been done ten a penny. Having these more rural types of characters it's fascinating, because you do have these very, you know, closed societies, very small societies that are different from kind of like you know, so huge population areas, and there's just something that's intrinsically interesting about these people. Is that right, Enrabe? I hope I pronounced that right. Use of real folk in this is really great, man. It makes it seem so much more sinister when it's the neighbours, and that's the thing, isn't it? A lot of these kind of like the characters are sold as being very, very friendly, or at least kind of, you know, just regular. But there's always that thing you don't know about these people, because they're not generally within your realm of experience. There's something about, you know, kind of small town kind of England, small village England, and Scotland, and wherever, you know, in the British Isles, that's just so underexplored that you don't get to, you know, most audiences don't get to know who these kind of characters are. Um, and you can clearly see that she hasn't been sacrificed. I like the British movies like Straw Dogs that show a side of Britain that doesn't really fit the image we have of the UK. Yeah, And and that's the thing. So much of the international kind of view of Britain tends to be kind of city centric. So there's very few times where you actually kind of get to see a lot more of Britain. And Britain is a it's such a diverse country, and so much difference in geographically in the population, all that kind of stuff. Even in the language, is crammed into such a relatively small area. And when it comes to like kind of the historical sort of thing, we're talking about the kinds of customs of people in different areas. These things are very wildly divergent. There's nothing quite like looking through the history books on sort of folk practices in Britain. Some of it gets nuts. Hello, Minty. Grobnob's name is upside down. Grobnob has been doing smart or clever things with his name. Saw Midsummer last year. It was not that impressive. I didn't mind Midsummer. I thought it was quite interesting. It's very reminiscent of this, but with a different kind of slant on it. Don't you love how this, like, the news of Howie's arrival just instantly travels across the island? It's like, and that's what it's like in a lot of these small places. The word of mouth is incredibly quick, and you don't have an awful lot of secrets, shall we say, in these kind of places. It's almost a musical. This film is kind of interesting. Yeah, you're probably right. There's things that they could have done differently. I thought certain motivations and kind of things, reasons for why things happen in Midsummer were a little confused, possibly. But I'd definitely give it another go at some point. Partly because it's quite fascinating, just the location that they're in. Didn't see any of the Wicker Man remakes. No, I haven't seen them either. Second similarity of Straw Dogs in this, the outsider is one who is made out to be a hero up until the last moment. But there's always a sense of invasion to some degree, isn't there, as well, with what goes on with these kinds of stories. You've got the outsider who comes into a small town, um, and doesn't know how to deal with the kind of weirdness of what's going on. I thought there was one with that Nicolas Cage. Yes, that's the infamous remake of this film. I do wonder if he had more than just the uniform sort of tightened up, because Howie's definitely a character that's got a stick up his ass. It's funny, isn't it? When you get this kind of folk stuff. It's just as true in America as it is in any country. Uh, be it like kind of like Bavarian dancing and all that sort of thing. You know, the kind of lederhosen and slap slap kind of stuff. All this folk kind of art is so easily laughed at, but there's often tremendous kind of significance to behind this stuff. A lot of history. It always looks very, very twee and very kind of like odd to modern eyes, but there's so much history and all that kind of stuff. It's hot in here tonight. I think you can tell a lot about a country from its folk art forms. Um, just how weird and eccentric and odd this stuff can be. Better folk horror movies are anti-supernatural and religion. Think about Witchfinder General. Um, it kind of depends. I think there's... Hello. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, you can tell a lot from kind of like the sort of folk stuff because it really does indicate the direction of the history. You can pick up so much interesting kind of snippets about a culture from that stuff. I never got on with the Children of the Corn films. There's a box set coming out. I think Arrow or someone's doing the 3 film release or something like that. Witchfinder General is bloody good though. Kind of, Iris. I'm sure he will come up. How is it Christopher Lee just everything he says is like fucking poetry? It's like Shakespeare. Doesn't matter what he's actually kind of saying. He just has that gravitas to him. Wouldn't it be better in the pubs if they were doing this kind of stuff than listening to the jukebox all the time? See, that's a big cultural shift, isn't it? Is what the pub is these days compared to what it used to be. Children might be picked for the worst long-running franchise. First one has its merits. I'm not a massive fan by a long shot, but yeah, it's franchise everything. Franchise everything. I think second a film becomes a franchise, then it's usually pretty much doomed. Not always. There are some good examples, but for by and large. When is Britt Ekland's stunt arse coming in? Yes. I think she refused to do the scene. And then to get the shot that they needed, they got a body double in. But Britt Ekland was not happy about that and complained about the body double's arse. Is there 10 Corn films? Jesus Christ. Nick Cage didn't need a stunt ass for the remake. Yes, she was, because she has quite a thick accent, so... It's kind of funny, isn't it? Because you've got Howie reacting like this to the sounds of the sex in the next room kind of thing. And he's really, really struggling with it. But it's all kind of counterpointed with the imagery of nature. That is, one of the big differences between the kind of religion that Howie follows compared to paganism. It's one's revering a god for everything, and for the pagans, it's nature is God. I don't know about you folks, but isn't it? It's always surprising how much music there is in this film. Like I said earlier, it's very much runs like a musical in so many respects. It'd be interesting to see if there's a stage version of this as well. Boing. Do people still do kind of like maypoles and all that sort of stuff? Because I always remember that being a part of like kind of a kid's activity, even kind of when I was growing up, in where I was growing up, that maypole would be done. When you get the whole kind of idea that this is kind of like a musical, if not, you could legitimately say it is a musical. Um, it's kind of how a musical should work. It's very easy to dismiss musicals as being very kind of like weird, and people find it difficult to sort of like key into them. But it's a sort of heightened reality when you're talking about musicals. So there's all this sort of stuff going on. Um, but every piece of music in this really does inform upon the story, and that's kind of important. It's not there for frivolous reasons. The musical can be a very a serious form of storytelling when it is actually sort of driven to do that kind of thing. Like, yeah, he's like, how dare you to talk to the children like this? What on earth? What's about in the exercise books of the Kama Sutra? He's such a tight ass that, there's the sound of creaking oak floorboards every time he walks, and it doesn't matter if he's actually walking on an oak floorboard. Ah, thank you for that, Adam. It's interesting. Excuse me, Miss Bear, have you been CRB checked? They were very different times, apart from anything else. Do you think stuff like this, sacrificing people to the gods for a good crop, would have happened in England hundreds of years ago? Certainly, stuff that we would consider to be troublesome, shall I say, definitely happened. And not just in the name of paganism, but certainly in kind of like whatever religious sort of terms these things could happen and would happen. Or you just look at the Witchfinder General, for instance. The kind of stuff that they did regarding that sort of thing was very real. Take care, John. You watched Grizzly 2 this morning. It's funny since the work print is much better edited. Yeah, I wouldn't give the producer the money for that, unfortunately. She turned out to be a bit of a dick, to say the least. I guess she does, John. Right back. I can't condone that kind of stuff, but yeah, I can't say I disagree, Kieran. How is a trained policeman? How is he not seeing the symbols everywhere he goes? Well, I don't think he's familiar with any of that stuff. This is all very alien to him. So a lot of the things that are going on are very, very alien to him. And that's a big part of what this film does. Is it puts this. He's not just out of town. He's out of this world in this place, and that's a kind of very important aspect of how this character's view of the world sort of pans out. It's just amazing locations and stuff in this place, isn't there? I'd love to visit this place. See, this is another thing that he does is because he is so damn alien to this place, he doesn't know how to respect the local kind of beliefs and that sort of thing. And there is that whole kind of aspect of this, which is as much a criticism of the kind of man of faith that this person is, and that can sort of ring out in kind of directions that really sort of it kind of implicates the church through historical events and that kind of stuff. So you can look at this as being well, it is very allegorical in a lot of respects. Oh no, I totally get what you're saying, Carrie. Um, they're all important questions. That's the thing. Asking those kind of questions is very important. Um, it's one of the things they don't want you to do in the major studio movies is to ask questions. They want you to sit there, watch the damn movie, eat your popcorn, and fuck off. Whereas this is a movie that really kind of demands that um, you explore it with your mind. And there's so much more you can go into. There are so many details in this film. It is kind of fun, isn't it? Into the yeah, yes, we as an audience today, particularly because it's such an old film. Um, we have an idea of what's going on, even if we haven't seen the film, because you'd have heard about it and all that kind of stuff. For the uninitiated viewer, back in the day when you sat at the cinema, you hadn't heard anything really about it. Um, this must have been a very disquieting experience because there is a strange vibe to everything that's going on. You just can't quite key into it unless you're informed. I mean, watching this film without any idea of what the hell it is you're sitting in front of, um, that's where the whole kind of idea of this film being a scary film kind of comes from. Um, we're so much more jaded these days, I think, when it comes to um, allowing ourselves to sort of be sucked into the movie. I think that's one of those things that is sadly lacking with a lot of audience members these days. Not so much necessarily amongst people like you, because you tend to be big film fans. If you're watching my channel, you tend to be big film fans of this, particularly of this genre. But if you were kind of used to watching Saw or something like that, and you go, well, you know, Wicker Man's a great film, it's a great horror film, and they sort of watch it to go, oh, nothing happens for X amount of time, and it's like kind of like. Same with The Exorcist. You know, you watch The Exorcist these days. A new audience find it very difficult to sort of appreciate that kind of film. It's very slow, very methodical. It's kind of film that you really do need to sort of surrender yourself to. I would say it is a horror film, but it's a very low key horror film. Um, I think that's there are so many different shades of horror, particularly back in those days. I mean, the horror in this film really sort of lies in the sort of um, the atmosphere that's sort of being generated around the mystery, and then the kind of revelation of what exactly is going on. That's an intrinsically horrific thing, especially when you got all these people around you who, despite being a bit odd, seem are ostensibly normal people. They're not monsters in the Hammer kind of sense. And you say this kind of thing with the Hammer horror. I mean, obviously, this is the sort of generation of films that was more in line with the kind of the resurgence of the golden age of horror, I guess. The kind of like um, things like The Exorcist would come out and all that kind of stuff. All those kind of films are much more contemporary to what this is, and they were not Hammer horror films. I think people can be shocked. It's just a case of how you deliver the stuff. I think it's hard to shock with just pure gore these days. People are shorter. Yeah, short. I think we've been trained to kind of consume much smaller bites of stuff, as opposed to sitting down and investing yourself for a couple of hours. Um, Even when you get like kind of like all these really really long films, all these kind of like Zack Snyder films, that kind of stuff, that are like 3.5 hours long or more. It's not a case of you have to have a great attention span for that sort of stuff. It's more that because there's so much going on, it's bang 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 bang, right throughout the entire film. Um, Stories like this are much more on a traditional kind of horror sort of thing, where it's about um, it's a much more personal experience. You sort of invest yourself in what's going on. I know I kind of got different experience to what I was expecting when it came to Exorcist. I saw The Exorcist for the first time probably about 93, I think it was. My local cinema showed it, so I went along and watched it on the big screen because it was the only way you could watch it at the time. There was no home release available, and I wasn't sure what to expect. And I did get something very, very different to what I thought this film was going to be. Feeling a generational divide big time. Um, I would say don't feel that. I'm not even saying that, kind of necessarily that these old films are better because they do this sort of stuff. Just a very different, like, kind of form of storytelling when it comes to the movies. Um, I think it's a more rewarding experience than you get from a lot of um, the kind of stories that are told through film these days. definite dearth of really interesting stories. And that's actually one of the things I liked about Midsummer. Was it was a film that really, whether you think it succeeded or not, it was a film that really kind of worked on drawing you in the same way that this film does. It does, operationally kind of work in a very similar way to this film. It's not just the kind of rough outline of the story. Give the makers of Exorcist 2 credit for being willing to take a chance. I don't know what Boorman was thinking with that. I don't think it's as bad a film as some people kind of think it is. Is it an Exorcist film? Hard to say. um, but it is interesting. I'll give it that much. There is a lot going on in it. Boorman's a bit of a niche taste, to say the least. Boorman didn't like The Exorcist, the first one, which is why he did such a different approach to Exorcist 2. There could have been a far, far, far worse sequel. It has to be said. Christopher Lee says God is dead. Who's going to argue with him? Except for Howie, obviously. It's the arrogance and the pomposity of Howie is a fascinating thing. He's so assured in his beliefs, while the villagers are also kind of casual in their own beliefs. I say casual; they're very diligent with their beliefs, but they're so comfortable with it, if you know what I mean. Actually, Christopher Lee didn't need to kind of like ramp things up. Generally speaking, he has such a presence that when he kind of like just utters a line, it's like I say earlier, it's like fucking Shakespeare, no matter what he's saying. I love this scene though because it's a kind of Garden of Eden sort of thing going on. Yeah, Gordon, and that's the thing. It is like I said, it's a kind of partly a critique of that kind of level of sort of mainstream belief, if you like, not just Christianity, but many that they're so damn certain. But these guys are also very, very certain that they're right. But the whole kind of tables are sort of turned in this respect because um, Lord Summerisle and the Islanders are the majority in this situation. Zardoz is a very oddly conceived film. Not to say it's bad. Some people describe it as a very bad film, and I don't think it is. I think it's flawed, but yeah. I've got the Blu-ray of Zardoz up there somewhere. So Kerry was saying earlier, he tends to sort of walk straight past all these kind of things like totems, if you like, symbols and all that kind of stuff. He's completely ignorant of what's going on around him. How Connery said it was a good idea, I will never know. Big part of the backstory of Zardoz was that Connery sort of did that role because he wanted to step away from the James Bond persona. He wanted to do something that would completely obliterate that image. He had an odd relationship when it came to his role as James Bond. He found it very troubling that he might not get away from it. Oh, there's a bit of that, Richard. Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of funny because it's sort of sinister, but not. If you're informed, if you know what's going on, then yes, it's sinister. But they're little clues, little things dropped into the movie that make you kind of, even if you're unaware of what those things mean, you notice them because the camera's picking it up. They're paying attention to that as the camera's paying attention to these things. So they mean something. You just don't necessarily know what it means, which always makes you feel slightly uncomfortable. Yeah, it was a rather infamous costume, wasn't it, he had in Zardoz? I don't think that's entirely unjustified, Minty. Although, yeah, Hostel is a very blunt tool to say the least. But having the locals, yeah, certainly sort of as a geographical kind of thing, and the way the locals behave and all that kind of stuff, it does have resonance with this. Though it kind of blows it, about however long it is. Was it a third way into the movie when shit comes down? Yeah, I remember Chubbalang. That was a lascivious. Hope you won't be around tomorrow to be offended by our May Day celebrations. He just Lord Summerall is just loving every moment of this. It's like, I'm so fucking with him. I love that they don't seem to feel the need to defend what they're doing because it's very normal to them. This is all part of their life, and like I say, Howie is so far removed from this that he struggles with it. Okay, take it easy, Karen. These evil guys sure know how to party. clue. I do love the whole kind of idea of with these kind of movies that the dread is an almost existential sort of thing. It's really kind of in it sort of permeates the atmosphere. So it's not explicit. It's kind of just part of the scenery. It is a great seduction scene. Once again, a musical number. I have no idea, Blue Iris. Quite possible. Somebody even did like a remake of "In Heaven, Everything Is Fine," from Eraserhead. Can't remember if it's like what band did that. I don't know if it was Britt Eklund in those days. It's a siren call that's sort of going on. It's kind of interesting. Again, you get this sort of unrestrained kind of sort of approach Britt Eklund's character has here, which is fully embraces sex and sexuality, and then you've got Howie who's struggling with all of this stuff. I mean, he's really kind of having a hard time trying to try to avoid the temptation. It's kind of interesting because you got the pagan end of things, which is just like it's part of who we are, it's, as human beings, and then you got the Christian side, which is trying to reject all that kind of stuff, show self-control and self-denial. You could look at this scene with what you're saying there as being basically if he did walk in there, that he would be corrupted. He would not be good for his final purpose. And you got to remember how he is this. Like I say, he's a very Puritan kind of guy, very pure of spirit, and kind of hard in his convictions. Uh, it's a hell of a performance as well from Edward Woodward. I mean, there's a guy who's just tortured, you know. So does she have some psychic abilities, or is she using magic for the seduction? Um, there's always a sense of like kind of like a spiritual aspect on both sides of this film. So you could potentially say that kind of thing. Um, I tend to look at that scene as being much more allegorical than kind of literal. Um, so there is this tempting presence the other side of the wall, and he struggles with the idea of not, with the act of not actually going and just letting loose, shall we say. So I wouldn't really put too much in the whole kind of psychic abilities kind of thing, or even magic necessarily, but think of it more as a spiritual battle, I guess. You reckon there's aphrodisiacs at play here? Bear in mind, he's a man that's kind of like come from a very Puritan kind of place, and he's gone into this place where it is um, essentially free love. There's a very sexual atmosphere to everything that's going on around in this place. That's kind of way it's all driven towards. Again, it's not just where he is; it's kind of like who he is and what this place is. Do you mean going around and showing them his truncheon? Naughty, naughty. I think this would be a very hard film to make these days. Not because of the nudity and all that sort of stuff, but there is something which is very intrinsic to just even like kind of the film stock that they're using, the time that this was made, the kind of films that you have to make. There's not too many studios would tolerate you making this movie these days. And Midsummer is one that came very, very close. But, Midsummer was a very kind of small production in most respects, not a huge studio production. Someone's got your spark plugs. Yeah, there is a niche of the very quiet horrors and that kind of stuff still going around. In fact, kind of there's a resurgence and that kind of stuff. Uh, but this film, with its oddities, like it being essentially a musical, um, with along with the kind of pace that it has, it's very difficult to get these films done. Most of those kind of films, like Hereditary and Midsummer, are very small productions that were kind of financed by slightly unusual companies, to say the least, I guess. Um, I've got to rewatch Hereditary at some point. Midsummer is a beautiful film. Yeah. Midsummer is a tricky film. I don't think it's necessarily a great film, but it was interesting enough for me to enjoy. I think it's a flawed film in some respects. There's certain aspects of the story I think become a bit overwrought. Um, But it's interesting. I'd rather see 10 films like that get made than one of these multi-billion friggin' dollar films that's going on. Because when you got a small film with a smaller budget, much more independent kind of thing, they tend to get the chance to make much more of the kind of film that they want to make. Whereas, big budget films, when they're 100 million or more, have to perform to demographics and stuff like that. And I've said it before on the stream, a lot of the audiences these days are have been fed crap for such a long time that's become the good stuff for them. It's like feeding someone McDonald's day in, day out, and then actually putting a filet mignon in front of them and then going like, what the hell is this crap? you know. Some of the Blumhouse films are good. Some of them are trash. They're kind of bit of a lottery, but I'm happy that Blumhouse is around. Put it that way. As long as they keep making the occasional very interesting film. I get that feeling as well, Minty. It's a rather macabre cake. Yeah, they're a little they're a little scattershot to say the least. Is Blumhouse, but they've made some interesting little films along the way as well. So I'm happy for that because I don't say there's no place for no brainer films. Your popcorn movies, all that kind of stuff. There's plenty of room for that kind of stuff. In fact, you could say it's good for the industry, but it's also important to maintain a degree of quality and at least effort in filmmaking. Oh no, Kyle. I'm sure there's a couple of laughs to be had in that. I have no interest in football whatsoever, I'm afraid, Richard. I wonder if that'll lose me any subscribers. The salmon of knowledge. Didn't Douglas Adams do something about a salmon of knowledge? Well, I hope you enjoy it, Richard. Whichever way it turns out. Do you rank the Wicker Man higher than The Exorcist? That's a tough one. I think I enjoy this more than The Exorcist. But I'll probably watch The Exorcist more than this. For one reason or another. See, I've probably watched this about 4 times, 5 times. Exorcist I've seen probably about 10 or a dozen times. But they're both very, very interesting films and both very interesting kind of approaches to, ideas around religion and that kind of stuff. I mean, The Exorcist is obviously very kind of pro the Catholic end of things, whereas this is kind of like very anti-Christian in some respects, or at least very critical, I should say, of Christianity. Yeah, Richard, I would say probably this has stood the test of time better in some respects. I think this is a more timeless kind of film in some respects. Partly because it is so odd. Its approach, the fact that it is like sort of near musical kind of structure to this film. All those kind of things make it different to a point that it's very hard to sort of replicate a film like this. Yeah, the history of all that stuff is really quite fascinating. Minty, for someone who, like me, is kind of not a believer, it is still nonetheless absolutely fascinating to see the kind of evolution of various different faiths. Because all this pagan stuff is, way, way older than Christianity. Um, Much more reflective of the stuff that would have been kind of previous to current religions being in this country. It's actually astounding in some respects that a lot of this kind of ideas and practices even managed to survive. Richard, just post it in Rambleholics, and we'll have a look at that. There are some plot conveniences in this, John. It does have to be said. I mean, the whole kind of premise of the whole idea of how his involvement as for one thing is one of those things that is it's hinted at is all of this stuff is planned. You know that there is a method that's going on, that nothing's done by accident. And of course, you know, how could they know that this person would turn up? Even with the mask on and all that kind of stuff, he looks completely out of place. Nice one, Minty. It's actually kind of funny because people who aren't religious are often very informed on kind of, you know, the stuff that's sort of going on. The one thing that, you know, you have to kind of try to take into consideration also is try to understand where other people are coming from in that respect. It's the vast majority of people who are religious are not a problem in the slightest. So it's not like you say, "Oh my God, it's awful." You know, everybody is involved with it. It's awful. It's not the case. I've got one friend in particular who is fairly devout Catholic in many respects. We have interesting conversations about this on occasions. It's fascinating to see the other kind of like, you know, hear the other side of the fence. My only problem comes when there's a lack of respect, and that's one of the things that Howie does. He doesn't have any respect for what's going on here. I think Jodorowsky's films do actually have, you know, kind of a plot of kinds. It's just very surreal in the way that they conduct the proceedings. There's lots of allegorical kind of stuff going on, you know, kind of surreal imagery, which is sort of plays into the what's going on with the atmosphere, and you know, kind of like, yeah, all those kind of like details. Holy Mountain for a casual viewer would put them off for Hoda or Skip for life. It's tricky, but it's not nonsensical though. It's just a little weird. He has a very eccentric kind of vision, to say the least. And if you ever seen the Dune stuff, that was kind of he was planning to do. It's kind of out there. But the Holy Mountain had plenty of energy for my liking. I kind of I did enjoy it. It's a little on the nose with some of the stuff that it does, but definitely a worthwhile film. Possession for me is a really good film, Richard. I have to say I got a lot out of that film. Oh, Howie, you are screwed now, mate. Yes, now he gets it. This is that kind of horror, which is like it's not the kind of thing that most people sort of think of as horror. The horror in this is the situation, the apparent inevitability of him being led to his fate. It's funny, isn't it? Because you've got it's two people who are fairly extreme in their beliefs at this point, and now you're seeing quite how extreme that Lord Summer Isle can be. Christopher Lee loved this film. Yes, he did. He absolutely loved this film. He constantly cited it as his favourite. Should have left Albuquerque. Yes, he should. It's a wonderful thing about the films of this era is that they weren't afraid to go with the dire endings. It's just a fast. Sorry, I've been so quiet. So it's a fascinating section of this film. Um, you could write an essay just on this scene alone. That's an interesting take, there, John. There's a sort of intrinsic irrationality to both ends, you know, an unreasonableness that where but at the beginning it's like he's like kind of the unreasonable one, and now they're doing what they're doing. Oh, Woodward's acting in this is just holy crap! It's good. I don't know how he felt about his career, to be honest with you, Richard. Um, but if you're going to have, like, you know, one damn good film in your career, then yeah, this is quite something. We shan't mention the big big screen remakes of the Equalizer. There's the poster image. No, I take back what I said a little bit earlier. There is something of the anti-religion in this. And again, I think it's really sort of founded in the irrationality of these people. You know, kind of like their belief is so solid that they will go to all sorts of lengths and unwillingness to sort of appreciate what the other side might be kind of like going through. Has to be one of the top 5 most impactful ending scenes of a horror film ever. Yeah. And distinctly unshowy as well. And how he'll burn well, because there's a lot of wood to burn. I think that's part of the big horror of what's going on is this ending. Oh my god, it's so uncomfortable to watch. To see someone who kind of like knows they're about to die in the most fucking horrific way is like kind of, oh wow. It's gone. And the sun looks down on them. Damn, that's a good film. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I certainly did. It's been a while since I've watched that. So, yeah. Wow. How much wood would a wood cut if a wood could cut wood? Oh dear. Okay, gang, make sure you mark Summarise holiday destination once lockdown is over. Yeah, it's not like they could have got many decent sacrifices over there, is it? During this. But just a fascinating film. Again, just the whole idea of using British characters from a different part of the Isles is always a good thing in my opinion, rather than just having all kind of like it's generic English person or Scottish or whatever. But yeah, oh dear. Now if only they could send Jesus Army posse to the same island and the same way. This is a little bit much. But you know, it is an interesting kind of the way it sort of handles who those characters are and why they're doing what they're doing. All that kind of stuff plays off against each other. So it's fascinating just for that, in my opinion. But yeah. I mean, there's been books written about this film, I guess, but fascinating film, and just such great performances. You know, particularly Christopher Lee and Edward Woodward as these two very opposite characters, and a whole kind of idea of Howie being just completely out of his depth in a world that he doesn't understand. You can forgive the little things that don't quite work when you sort of like look at the details of the story, just because they don't matter that much. When you get some people sort of nitpicking movies for every teeny tiny little fault, I always find it a little bit irksome, because it's a certain amount of these films you sort of have to kind of forgive or work with or allow to just happen, just to make the film run in a sensible way. And I think it's just as true of certain parts of this film as it is of any other film. But the atmosphere of it, the weirdness of everything, the fact that they kind of make it this sort of musical kind of thing, it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. I heard the UK and such has heavy Delta variant. Yes, I guess. It's all over the place, you know. That's the thing. It's just one of the things about Britain when it comes to that kind of stuff is we've been very good at kind of discovering different variants. We're kind of good on the gene sequencing kind of end of things. But yeah. Oh dear. Every movie has a few little faults. Yes, they do. And it's just a case of whether or not those faults are deal breakers. A lot of the time they're not, you know. I mean, when you see like analysis of like kind of like the Star Wars sequels, and it's like kind of, well, this ship wouldn't move like that, or this bomb wouldn't drop like that, and it's like, yeah, it's like kind of, yeah, you're worrying about the wrong things when it comes to that. Oh dear. But yeah, I'm taking it you all enjoyed that, so that's a good thing. And Richard, if you kind of drop that film into the Rambleholics, that would be we'll have a look at that for the next one. Next week, I'm not quite sure what's happening next week. I'm supposed to be going up to Gary's at some point, so there may not be one next week, but there will be following that. And to be honest, I think for August, I might be trying to think of something, you know, kind of like do a bit more over August, because I have most of August off, because my theatre's going to have no power, so I won't be allowed in the building. So I'll have a think about that and see what we can do. Thank you, Richard. But anyway, I think for now, because it's getting really fucking hot in here, I'm going to call it a night and say thank you for joining. It's been lovely to have you along, and especially for this movie. And we'll find something really, really good for the next one as well. Take care, folks, and see you next time.